Hello everyone, welcome to a tutorial on custom wheels. I saw a lot of comments either on the YouTube video for Alpha Console 2.0 or in some of the Alpha Console and Skins Discord servers. So in this video I'm not going to be going over every minute detail on how to make wheels. What I will be doing is showing you the steps you would need to take, along with 2, possibly 3 of the most important things to look out for when you are creating your wheels. The most common thing I see is people asking where to get textures of the wheels. The first place to look is in the Rocket League Wiki Skins Discord server. If you head down to the database and programs database, and in here, you will have actually that's a lie, it's not most. You will have some wheel textures in there. If the wheel you are trying to look for isn't in there, then you will need to learn how to rip textures from Rocket League. If you're on Steam, I have covered how to use Ninja Ripper, which I use, but you can also look up how to use that online. There's plenty of tutorials. If you are on Epic Games, you will need to use UE Viewer. Again, there are lots of tutorials out there and lots of places to download it from. So you can pick whichever platform you're on, go and look up where to download and how to use those programs. Once you have your programs, you can then rip the textures, and once you have the textures, we can now move on to how to put them, or what to look for what you need inside Rocket League. So we open up Alpha Console, we go to settings, we enable developer mode. We come back down to our customizations, and we scroll down to wheels. And for this, for the beginning of this example, the first wheel we're doing, I'm going to show you the triplex wheels. If we go to wheels, are these ones, triplex. And as we go through the parameters, we have rim emissive, rim diffuse, rim normal, and then tire, rim RGB. So we're not looking, for the moment, we're not looking at the tires, we're only looking at the rims. And this will bring us on to our first example of what to look for. So I already have triplex wheels set up, ready to go. I have the diffuse, which I've blanked out Rocket League on the sides, on the diffuse, and on the emission, I just have Alpha Console. Now, I don't think I have this set up yet. So inside these parameters, we just want rim normal, which we'll come on to later. But we'll need diffuse and emissive. So once we have those, we can open up our JSON file. And here I've got triplex, which is the name that shows inside of Alpha Console. The item ID for triplex, which can also be shown here. And the 2 parameters that we are using so far. We will add the normal on later on. And then for the textures, we have wheel diffuse 2, which is here. Wheel diffuse 2, which I've just blanked out Rocket League. It says Rocket League on these parts. I've just blanked that out. And the emission just has Alpha Console. So with all of that set up, if I turn off developer mode, this will now start caching the textures. So this will now change to the actual custom decal, which I didn't apply, so it won't do that. Triplex, there we go. So the first thing you can see is we have custom textures. So the textures are working. There's no Rocket League on the diffuse all the way around. And the emission does work because it says Alpha Console. So if we quickly compare that to what it used to be, the diffuse and emission are in the same place. The emission does work because we get the emission, which is these parts, this metallic grey part, and the emission is basically the text. So if we now turn that back on, it does work, but as you can see, the emission itself is a lot darker, as well as the actual diffuse. As I said at the start, there are two very important things you need to know, not only about wheels, but about textures, customizing textures in Rocket League. This one we're going to look at is the gamma output. The second one is transparency. Now this wheel doesn't use transparency, so we'll come on to that later. If we go into here, into our image editor, this is one I've already made. I've used this for a render, so I haven't actually outputted this correctly with the correct settings. But what I've done for this tutorial is I made a new layer and just blanked out this Alpha Console like that. So there's no text on the diffuse. However, well, that is what you're seeing here. This is the diffuse you're seeing. So even though the original is correct, it's not displaying correctly because we haven't messed with the gamma. So the best way, if you're going to have a bunch of different layers, you can either merge them all into one, you can put them in a folder. But if you've got a bunch of layers, the best way I've found is you save it. So let's say you've got all these layers, lots of different stuff on them. So you save this texture that you have. You then open it up where you've saved it. So this is what we're working with. So we just got the one texture. And then you would need to increase your gamma output by 2.2. Now, however, whatever software you use, you will need to look up how to do that. I'm using GIMP, so I go to colors, levels, and because I've already done this before, I just do presets and my last used one. And as you can see here, 2.2. This is the output. So I OK that. I now export that. Once that's exported, I turn on developer mode. As I've mentioned in the Alpha Console 2.0 video, there are lots of ways to refresh rather than going into dev mode, turning it on, refreshing the textures and then turning it off. But as I refresh, now the diffuse looks normal. So I'm going to turn that off for now. So now we have our diffuse done. We need to do the same to the emissions. Here's the emission, Alpha Console, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to open the saved texture up. So we have everything. We've gone from all of these layers down to one. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. Will emission save. And then if I developer mode, refresh, now we have our emissions back to what they were as standard. You don't even need to use or see decrypted files to know what to do. There's only two things you need to worry about: the transparency of the texture and the output. What you just saw me do is take the original, where is it? You saw me take the original texture and put it into Rocket League, and it was completely dark. If your texture does not use transparency like this one, then the only thing left is the gamma. So if your texture doesn't look correct and you're following, it has no transparency, or you are following the correct transparency, we'll come on to that later, and it doesn't look correct, the only thing left is gamma. So again, you don't need to look at ripped files. Oh, sorry, hang on. How can I word this? You don't need to look at the material properties in game. All you need to do is look at the transparency of the texture that is used. If it's not using transparency, the only thing left for you to change will be the gamma. Now, I said we'll come on to the normal, which we will. And as you can see here, the normal of the text, or the original text, Rocket League, you even got the bits on the side, is all that's left. So what we will do is we will take the bump, put that in here, and open this up. Now, here's the transparency part. You can see there's lots of transparency on this. So if I do color picker, and let's take, where's Rocket League? So Rocket League on the sides. Let's take the color of this part. This is the only bit we're going to change, so let's take that. You can see the color picker. You've got your red, greens, and blues, and here is the alpha 66.3. So that's the value we want to keep. So what we're going to do is simply remove Rocket League from here and keep in that same color value. So what I'm going to do is just fill that in with pink. This is, I'm not going to show you all of my tips of how I do things. You guys can figure out stuff on your own. However, for a wheel as simple as this, you can follow along. So I've pre-selected Rocket League. I'm going to show this solid pink. I'm going to select, invert, delete, and then select, invert, hide our pink layer, select the normal, delete. So I've now got a normal map without Rocket League and a pink layer just on its own. What we're going to do is then take our color picker, I think it was 40 something, 49.8. Let's work with that. So we're going to select our group or the layer. I just made a group anyway, but I'll select the layer and let's do 47. 47 transparency. Export. We'll bump. And when you export with transparency, you need to make sure this is ticked. Again, whatever software you use, you need to look up how to do this if your program doesn't do it automatically. So we're going to go export. We're going to come into, actually let's go into Rocket League and find out the parameter name, rim normal. Come into here, let's just copy this, rim normal, and what did I call it? We'll bump. Save. So now we've made a JSON change, we need to actually refresh the JSON files. So AC plugin _ reload wheels in the backers mod F6 console. That's done. And if we go up here, Rocket League, and if we refresh texture, boom, gone. So now that is smooth as hell. There's no bump on the sides. We have our Alpha Console emission, and let's just come back into the diffuse in here. Let's remove these. Where did we put? So let's do it on the top one. let's do a new layer with white, and let's just say Alpha Console 2.0. Make that a bit bigger. That'll do. Let's rotate by 90. We'll put that a bit too big. Whoops. Put that in there. There we go. So again, this is our standard diffuse. We're going to save it as diffuse. I'm then going to open it up again. And I'm then going to do levels 2.2, save, export. Do a refresh, and up the top, you can see it more over here. 2.2, probably should have put that down on the side more, but here's our diffuse 2.2, here's our emission alpha console, and everything looks correct. We've got the normal map, which follows transparency, and as a test, what we can do is, now that we have that, let's open this up, a new one, so it's still blank, colors, levels, preset 2.2, we'll bump, refresh, and I think we've gone back to how it was before, because it looks like the color changed a bit of it, or the reflection of the light changed a bit. So that's why we have to do gamma change. Gamma change, the way Rocket League does it, as I said earlier, gamma change is not happening on the textures. Like when you get a texture like this one, it doesn't have gamma change on here. They do the gamma in UDK when they package everything up. So that's why if you do banners, if you have done banners before, you'll notice when you put it in, the banner is always dark. That's because banners have the 2.2 change when they're packaged up in UDK. They're not applied to the actual texture. And of course, these wheels have RGB, which means if we select another color, whoops, we are still in dev mode. There we go. If we select another color, the RGB will change, such as our text, but as you can see, our 2.0 text above is still white. That's because it's not in RGB, it's on the diffuse. So all of the RGB stuff is changing and looking correct as it should be. If you want to do, I don't know, make this a lot darker, like the wheels a lot darker, what you can do is just simply not do the gamma. So if I export this as it is, this has no gamma applied to it, because remember gamma is a lot brighter. And if I now go into dev mode, refresh, turn off, it's a lot darker, and I think that looks a bit nicer. So it's almost black, but you still have that materialistic effect that they have in the diffuse, but it's a lot darker, and I kind of like that a bit more for these wheels. But again, do what you need to do. The emission itself will work. It's still as bright as it is because the emission, we have already applied that gamma output. But yeah, play around, see what you want to do. So moving on from that, the next thing is tire treads and changing the tread between one wheel and a different wheel. For example, which one was it? This one? No, it wasn't Satirishi. Joko? I think it was Joko. It was Joko. So, here are the original Joko treads. And here is what I swapped it with for Alpha Console, which is the tire from one of the season rewards. The good one. The good one. I don't know which one it was. So, tire treads, for the most part, are easy to do. There are some variants to this. However, you will see this when you get the textures and compare them. So, for example, why is that? Oh, I'm in the wrong folder. So, here is a comparison. We have the Joko XL tire treads, and we have the SSL whatever, season whatever tire treads. These are pretty easy to do. Just by looking at it and understanding how tire treads are displayed, you can see here's the main tread. Here is the up to the outer portion or inner portion, the inside here. And all of this is down to the outside. So, here is a bit more tricky, as everything is just one color and then you just have the tread. But if we look, are we in dev mode? No, we're not. Okay, so let's get my original Jokos. If you look at the original Jokos, you will be able to see how it looks and compare that to what we have here. Actually, let's turn off these completely and go to the original Jokos. Here we go. So you can see the tire tread, and as it comes round and down, you have the Joko XL text and the stripes. If we look here, Joko XL, there's the text, and this indent here is the stripe, which goes all the way around. So we're pretty much focusing just on this bit here. Like this, we're focusing on here. So here's the edge of the tire tread. Here's the other edge, and we're just replacing what's in here. So if we come onto this, all we're looking for from this, we don't care about the outside. There's nothing here. Again, the same for this bit. There's nothing. So what we can do, this, where it turns to like a lighter color, that's going to be the outside of it as it wraps around the wheel. So basically we can just cut from here, copy and paste. Now, as you can see, this is a lot, hang on, let's get rid of that. This is a lot larger. So all you'll need to do, let's drop the opacity down so we can see a bit more, is if we unscale that, just drag it until we cover the edges. Like that. Apply that, bring up our transparency, and from there you can erase all of the inside of here up to, let's say, about here. Delete, and boom. Now if you're going to have, you can match it completely, so you don't have this break, or again you can make a new layer underneath this, with the same color, and then obviously adjust your transparency as needed to fill in any holes, but I'm not going to show that here. You guys can figure it out on your own. Once you have that, you'll then bring it into Rocket League. Before we do go into Rocket League, what I will say is that as you haven't adjusted any transparency on here, there's no need to do so. You would only need on this image that we have brought in. The only transparency you'll need to do is if you do actually make changes to the bump map or the normal map, such as taking out this text and that stripe, you can remove that and then apply it to your layer. So we won't need to do anything for transparency. The only thing you will need to look at or look for is once you bring it into Rocket League, is if the normal looks off or weird, or it drastically alters the coloring of your wheels, then you'll need to go and adjust the gamma. As mentioned earlier, gamma is not applied to the texture itself, it is applied to the material when they compile the actual files. The other type of normal files or bump files is when they are laid out like this. So this is one wheel and is split and spread out into two different parts rather than the actual one complete file that we had. So the bump map here on the Jocos is just one complete stretch, whereas the dices or the file, the type of wheel tread, the Falcon wheels, the Falcon treads, these are split into two. So it's not impossible. You can take a tread and match it to this. The trouble that you might have is these bits here are actually curved. You see they're fanned out rather than just a complete straight line. But as I said, you can do it. It's not impossible. You will just need to spend more time on actually doing it. For example, a few wheels that have this are the Dices, which I've just taken this from, and also the Cristiano wheels. So any type of wheels that you see with this tread will use this Falcon type, and they will always look like this. What you're trying to do is take tread from one wheel and apply it to another. You will need to follow the UV, which is this layout. You need to follow the UV of the tread you are going to replace. So for example, this is the Joco tread. I will need to take this and match it to these. So it goes on, again, Cristianos or Dices. Now, I mentioned RGB maps before. RGB maps in terms of wheels normally will be for things such as emission or color change in parts. So for shield wheels, there are two parts on the RGB texture that refer to how everything is displayed. But RGB doesn't always mean emissions, and I'll come on to that later. The first part of RGB, specifically for these wheels, is the emission. So as you can see here, Cloud 9. If I change the wheel color, the text will change to blue because the text is in RGB, the same as here. The other thing, the other color in an RGB map could be I don't know the correct term, but I would call it a soft emission. So this is like a hard emission. This is like, it's very in your face, stand out, bold, okay? This is high emission. Everything on the inside here is the diffuse. So all of this metallic, this grey, this is the diffuse. However, if you look inside, you have like a softer blue. That is an emission, but on top of the diffuse, and it's not overriding the diffuse. It's basically, if I come into here, if I make a layer, and if I make this layer black, this will be the hard emission. So this completely overrides the diffuse. You cannot see the diffuse. The soft emission is something, I don't know, like, actually let's make this, is something like this. So you will still see the diffuse, but it's a lot lighter, it's a lot softer. And that's what the second part of an emission or an RGB can do. So for these default wheels, all of this inside would be a soft emission. So this inside of the wheel would change depending on the color you had. Here's more of a better example. Can I get green? That's better as well. So you can see this green here. It's a soft emission where you still get the diffuse, and if you put text there, you will still see the text on the diffuse, but you have this green overlay. The C9 or Cloud9 is a hard emission. It's very bright and it completely overrides your diffuse. So you won't be able to see anything you put under this. Now the second type of RGB for wheels is nothing to do with color changing. It's to do with paint finish. So an RGB can be the difference between showing the diffuse itself or two paint finish types, like a glossy or something like a glossy effect or a shiny or a shinier effect. So my last example, what do I have as an example? BMW? What's on my BMW? Ugh. Okay, BMW wheels. Ugh, they're a nightmare to work with. So let's change. Do I still have... So here's the diffuse. Obviously you can see there's transparency to it. If I... That's on test. What does it look like? I do this. There we go. Back to just the logo. So as you saw, the diffuse has transparency to it. So I always follow the transparency. Luckily, these are pretty good to edit. Yeah, they're very good to edit. They're just a pain in the ass for actual displaying textures. By that I mean these are mirrored and it doesn't look pretty when you apply a texture, as you saw with the original or the first set of G2 textures. So again, I'm going to reiterate and stress the point of the two most important things when it comes to wheels: transparency and gamma. The reason this isn't very old decal that I made, however, the reason for this is to prove the point that you must follow the colors and the parameters, not parameters, but the properties of the actual texture. So I keep opening that. Well, you know what? Fuck off. There we go. So let's go to decals, animated decals, season rewards. And here is the texture we are using. As you can see, there's a lot of transparency to it. I followed that transparency. Luckily, it didn't need any gamma, so it's fine. When it comes to testing your wheels, as I said, I'm going to say it again and I will keep saying it. The best indicator, take the original textures that you get for the wheels, put them into the game without editing them at all. Transparency is the obvious one. If you open it up and you see transparency, you must stick to that transparency. If you open it up, it's not transparent, put it into Alpha Console without editing it. If it doesn't look right, if it's darker, if whatever, then the only thing remaining is your gamma output, which is 2.2. You must increase the gamma on your final render, your final save, your final export. You must increase the gamma to 2.2. If you've done banners before, you'll know exactly what I mean. If you've paid attention throughout this video, you will know how to do it. Again, if you use any other software apart from GIMP, you will need to go and look up how to do that inside of your software. The other thing I will say, I've seen a lot of people do this, and I strongly urge you not to do, is when you use developer mode and you you select a parameter, you screenshot it, and you use this. Do not, for the love of God, do not do that. You'll never get a true, you'll never get an accurate representation of the texture you are using. As you know, throughout this video, this Joko XL tire treads, they use transparency. However, as you can see here, it is not transparent. Do not use these. You can use it as a guide so you know what to look for, but do not use them as an actual texture. Learn to go and rip textures yourself. Again, there are plenty of tutorials out there on what software to use, how to get it in the game, how to extract the textures. Okay, rant over. I've mentioned this in the original video, original Alpha Console video, of tires not being flipped. For example, dices. This is a good example. Alpha Console, and then it only works on one side. That's just the wheel type. For this, I've sort of seen a trend. Going through wheels, I've seen a trend on something that gives away whether the text will be flipped or not. And I'm not talking about text on the actual default wheels. Something like this. I'm not talking about that. This is a dead giveaway, so obviously you will know. But I think I've seen a trend, and I will wonder if anyone else will pick up on what that trend is. So let me know down below if you think you know what the giveaway tell is, again, apart from this. The last thing, speaking of text on the wheels, there are some wheels, again, there's three types if you're speaking of RGBs, normals, and diffuses. There's three types pretty much to each. Actually, I suppose there's only two types to diffuse. However, this is one that I have found as well. So normally when you do a diffuse, like the Joko XLs, as we saw earlier, it's just a straight line, which is this, then the text, straight line, which is this. So it goes in half like that. With the dices, dices are a bit different. They are in one texture. It just goes in a circle because it's split in half rather than actual repeating. However, there is Zombas. And Zombas are, yeah. So if I open up, where are we? Here's the diffuse for the Zomba. As you can see, there's only one. For some reason, Zombas are split into thirds. I have no idea why. I really don't know why. It could be the wheel type. But yeah, I don't know. So whatever this wheel type is, as we saw, Dices and Cristianos are called Falcon. So whatever this type is, it could be that, or it could be something with the Zombas itself. My guess is the wheel type. But yeah, so I haven't come across many wheels like this, but it'll be interesting to see what you guys find. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a bit about the way to do wheels, exchanging tire treads. Again, please, I've said this a lot throughout the video, and I really hope you guys take this on board. Please don't use Texture Viewer in Alpha Console to extract or use textures, because you will lose a lot of information by doing that. And secondly, you can test everything on your own. The only two things you need to remember is to use transparency of the original texture, and also using the 2.2 output of gamma. If you follow those three things, you'll be sailing. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'm looking to do a video on custom cars and custom charms. However, for those of you that know, probably none of you here, I flipping hate UDK. It's giving me a lot of issues at the moment. So hopefully once we get that sorted, we can get a video out to you guys. Again, thank you. Have a good day, good night, good evening, wherever you guys are. And I shall see you later. Peace out.